Council meeting. If you'll all please rise for the invocation. Tonight's invocation will be given by Father D. Freeman with St. James Episcopal Church. If you'll all also please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the abundance of your gifts you've bestowed upon your people in this community, for the bounty of the city and the beautiful land on which it resides. We give thanks for the freedom we share here and the opportunity to live in a land ruled by the citizens of the country. I pray tonight for our councilman and for our mayor, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully and dutifully move through the agenda set before them tonight, that they may always remember to serve this community with transparency, honesty, and humility, working to promote the well-being of this city that we love and the people for whom they serve. I pray also for the people of this community who are gathered here this evening. May they be filled with your peace and patience, filled with a mindfulness of your call to kindness and hospitality, and reminded that we are all humans in this same race. All these things we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Father Freeman. You got to work on Jimmy for us, right? All right. Okay. First item on tonight's agenda will be to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting, the work session, and the agenda meetings which were held on the 23rd of July, 2018. Council, do you have any additions, changes, deletions to these minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve these minutes as submitted.
So moved.
Second. A motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, the minutes are approved as submitted. Thank you, Council. Mayor Wilson, your report, please.
Thank you, Council President. There is a request for an AG opinion on the agenda tonight concerning the election on October 2nd to vote on a new form of government, council manager. A lot of information has been disseminated about this special election, and the amendment to this law has been confusing at best. Intrinsic to the vote is whether we are voting for a council manager government with council by district or at large. I have already voiced my support for this new form of government, although it reduces the role of a mayor significantly. I believe the future of Fairhope will be better served by a consistent professional manager handling the day-to-day business, which sometimes requires unpopular decisions. Personnel matters should not be the subject of political drama. In addition, I believe that this form of government lends to a council which includes a mayor as a voting member, a better working relationship. Council mayor form of government has been a long-term, council mayor form of government has been a long-term conflict in Fairhope and has existed long before this term. We should look at ways we can do better for the city. The fact that the miscommunication about council being at large or by districts is unfortunate, but one that must be resolved before the vote. One of the advantages of this new form of government was to create 3 voting districts to promote more accountability and better representation. As the fastest growing city with diverse needs, I do not see a strong argument to keep a council at large. This makes sense in very small cities with a population of 3,000, which is why most cities begin with a council at large. However, as the city grows, districts are essential, fair, and should be required. Clarifying this important distinction is a must. Many who signed the petition, including me, believed they would be petitioning for a new form of government with council districts. The vote should not take place until this is clearly communicated. Both the council and my office should work together on obtaining this communication as soon as possible. It is our joint responsibility to make sure our citizens understand what they are voting for and what is at stake. If an answer cannot be determined in enough time before the vote, we need to request the vote be rescheduled. In addition, I believe the city needs to file for a hearing, since generally the court finding is stronger than the AG opinion. All this is to make sure our citizens have the most accurate information upon which to cast their vote. Copies of the draft budget were given to council this past Friday with a schedule to go over it between now and the end of September to successfully pass the budget on time this year, which is around October 1st. We will never be able to truly evaluate and compare progress year to year until the budget is consistently passed annually. When the budget is passed late, too many factors come into play when goals are not met, including acquisitions for capital purchases. This inefficiency is costing taxpayers. An interdepartmental task force met at the marina to discuss building a dry storage facility on our property at Fairhope docks. The initial response of all attendees is that this makes sense for the marina because it's a cleaner business, provides great return on investment, and there is a high demand for this type of storing. We will be gathering the necessary information, estimates, and presenting a report to council with recommendations. I have received a lot of compliments from new and longtime players at Quail Creek about the condition of the course. I've been hearing a lot of best shape ever, and if you haven't golfed in a while, please try it out for yourself. It's the result of excellent planning, and we really appreciate Jeff Marks and his crew for such a great result. Employee safety is a priority. The city has not had a safety plan, training, or budget for quite some time. We have our Public Works Department, police, and we own all of our utilities. Thanks to Ron Hayes on our personnel board, all of our department heads just completed a 10-hour OSHA safety training course, and supervisors will follow after Labor Day. He is helping all departments update their safety manual and transition into an ongoing safety training program. It is of the utmost importance that we keep our employees safe, and it is also important to be good stewards of our tax dollars. This training will reduce workman's comp and our liability for health insurance. After meeting with high school students over the last few years, I've asked the different groups about their interest in forming a junior city council. I'm happy to report that I've been meeting with a rising senior, Mimi Train, from one of these meetings, who will lead the charge in this effort. This is an exciting new endeavor to get our high school students more involved in their community and their government. The council will comprise of 10 members, which will be chosen through applications. All high school students living in Fairhope are eligible, regardless of the school they attend, including homeschoolers. Information will soon be available at the schools and online. The council will be in place by October. And lastly, I'd like to give Eric Cortinez 30 seconds to give an update on our Booster Club. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Mayor, for giving me a minute, less than a minute. A couple of things. I want to make sure you, Friday night at the football field is the Meet the Pirates event. They will have all of the fall sports athletes for Fairhope Middle School and Fairhope High School there. It starts at 6 o'clock. We're going to serve hamburgers, hot dogs. We've got meals for everyone. Everybody is invited. We would love to have you there. And I'll add for the Fairhope Legacy Foundation, they are having the first annual football golf tournament Saturday, the following day at 1 o'clock at Lakewood. They will serve lunch at noon, and then they'll have a shotgun start for the tournament at 1 o'clock. This is to help raise funds for the athletic departments, and it's being sponsored through the Legacy Foundation, but everybody is welcome to be there and help support the Pirates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Next item on tonight's agenda is public participation regarding agenda items. If you would like to address the council to speak to items number 5 through 24, if you'll come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Again, this is for agenda items only. If you have something else to bring forth before the council, you will be asked to wait until item 25, which is our last public participation session. So I'll open up the floor. If you have to address the council regarding items 5 through 24, come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Chuck Zunk, and I live at 59 White Avenue here in Fairhope. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'd like to address Agenda Item 9, the draft language of a letter to the Attorney General requesting an opinion on the issues pursuant to the October 2nd referendum on the council manager system. I know you have all read and studied the draft language, so you can appreciate the concern and dismay among Fresh Start Fairhope supporters about how it's worded. It's clear that the author of this draft has a strong bias against our petition generally and a strong bias against the at-large form of council representation. And we wonder why such a biased draft was submitted to you for approval in the first place instead of a much more neutral and straightforward document in what appears to be an attempt to disenfranchise over 800 registered voters who followed every legal step to secure the October 2nd referendum. What are the proofs of this bias in the draft? In the interest of time, I will present only the two most obvious, the first of which is the draft attempts to resurrect the same lie spread by a competing petition drive that somehow the Fresh Start Fairhope petition is not legal. It was proven a lie then, and it's still a lie today. The Fresh Start Fairhope petition was vetted and validated by the probate court judge prior to the petition drive, and over 800 registered voters signed it in good faith. Secondly, the draft is over half a page of artfully drawn legal pettifogging trying to describe a hypothetical situation that's close to, but not entirely like, the actual petition submitted by Fresh Start Fairhope, thereby creating a strong bias by using most of the truth but not all of the truth. And not only is the language of the draft convoluted, it totally avoids using the best evidence, which is the wording of the Fresh Start Fairhope petition itself. Council members, this is a very simple issue that should be described to the Attorney General in simple, concise questions that contain not just the truth, but the entire truth, unlike the draft in your work papers. Now here's the petition. Just start with this petition itself, submitted to the probate court judge on July the 5th. The below listed registered voters residing in the city of Fairhope, Alabama, hereby petition the Baldwin County probate judge to set an election in accordance with the Council Manager Act of 1982 as amended to change the current Fairhope mayor-council form of government to the council manager form of government, with the city council composed of 5 members, including a mayor and 4 other council members. Then ask these 2 simple questions. Number 1, is it the responsibility of the Fairhope City Council to determine whether council members elected under its proposed council manager system shall be at large or by districts? And if yes, should the city council make this determination before or after the October 2nd referendum? And the second question, if the city council does not have this responsibility, then how shall the determination of at-large versus district elections be made? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Zunk. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council? Items 5 through 24.
Good evening. I'm Beverly Currington. I'm new to Fairhope, so I'm very unfamiliar and not as well prepared as the last gentleman. But I have invested in a new home on Seacliff Drive, and so the marina and the docks are certainly something that's very near and dear to my front door and also to my heart. So I would love to gather some more information about this and just ask for your consideration. Small neighborhood, one street in and one way out as far as increased traffic. That's would be one of my questions and concerns that I would have and would like to express. And then the other would be noise factor. I have this fear that I will be reliving living in the airport in Atlanta where you hear the constant beep, 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 beep. I don't know if any of you have been around where the cart comes and does the transportation, but it's pretty faint now from the Fly Creek Marina, and it's not bothersome at all, but it being 2 doors down is certainly something I would, be a little bit concerned about. So I just wanted to voice that and just ask that I can maybe continue to follow up on hearing your plans on the size of the storage and those considerations that I just mentioned. But thank you for hearing me.
I do want you to know, then that's not being considered tonight. The dry storage is
Oh, I'm
not
so
on the
sorry.
agenda.
I thought it
There is
was.
one item on there related to that, so that's fine. I want to let you slide with that.
Thanks.
Just some pedestals that provide power to boats that existing slips are being considered tonight. So that's
My
up for a vote.
mistake.
No,
I
that's
wasn't
okay.
sure,
I just
but
want to let you know that, not to worry, that's not on tonight's agenda.
I was going to feel remiss if I didn't take the opportunity
Right,
to say
absolutely.
something. So thank
I
you for
understand.
indulging me.
No problem. Okay. Is there anyone else? Items 4 through 25, or 4 through 20, or 5 through 24 even. Okay. Seeing no one else, I'll close public participation for agenda items, and we will have another portion of the agenda where you can address the council on items of other matters that are not on the agenda. Council comments. Councilman Conyers?
Yes, sir. First, I'd like to thank Father D for giving the invocation tonight. Always nice to have your home preacher in the audience, so appreciate that. Looking back, I see Lieutenant Hollinghead, saw Lieutenant Sledge earlier. A little different to look back there and not see Chief Pettis, and just would like to, again, congratulate him on retirement, on a remarkable career. He's a fine, fine person. I would say he had a great career as a police officer, but he's an even better person. So if you see Chief Pettis out and about, please wish him congratulations on retirement. And lastly, just got all the schools back in session by Monday. I think Christ the King and St. Michael's will be the last two. So be safe out there. A lot of kids and teachers and parents kind of going through the scramble these last few days. But just good luck to everyone, and hope you have a good start of the school year. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman Conyers. Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, again, Chief Pettis, thanks for your service to the city over the many decades. Whoever fills your shoes have big shoes to fill, especially with his integrity. Secondly, I want to give you all an update on the clubhouse. I took a little tour today with Lynn and Richard Johnson, some of the architects and the builder that did the repairs to the clubhouse. A few things still need to be addressed. Probably be a change order coming next council meeting to replace the windows underneath the porch. Somehow they got taken out of the contract. I don't know at what stage, but the building has all new windows except for facing the driving range. So I'll have that next meeting. We can discuss it then. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Brown. Councilman Boone?
Yeah, I would also like to talk about Chief Pettis, except I don't have enough time to tell what a fine job this fine gentleman has done for this city. But I would stress that if anybody does see him on the street, please shake his hand and tell him that he will be missed and that he has done such a great job. I'd love to explain to him how great retirement is, but I've been working more since I've retired than when I did work. So, but good luck to the chief, and I hope everything works out well for him. That's all I've got.
You're supposed to explain to him how much work it is after you retire, before you retire, so Councilman Boone, so that you're done to retire.
A little late on that.
Yeah, I'll just, sound like a broken record here, but thank Chief Pettis for 30-something, almost 40 years of service to the city of Fairhope, both as not only was he a policeman, but he performed other jobs within the city prior to becoming a policeman in the city. So, thank you for that. I think that the media did a tasteful job in reporting his retirement last week. I thought that was pretty cool when he was signing off for the last time. I don't know if any of y'all saw that. I'm not trying to point out one media outlet over another, but it was pretty touching to watch that. So it was a good story for the city of Fairhope. But on item 21 tonight, we will hopefully adopt, if the council is willing to vote on that, the sequence of events to appoint an interim chief and also our permanent chief of police for the city of Fairhope. And I'll just give you a quick preview if you can't stay. We got a long agenda tonight, but that we will be calling for an interim chief from in-house police officers only, if that goes through the way it's planned tonight. The other item that I wanted to touch on is we did have one citizen touch on the resolutions concerning an attorney general's opinion, and also the mayor touched on that as well. And when we get to that item 9, I will make some comments regarding that resolution item and how that came to be on the agenda. And I'll give my own personal opinion on, that opinion. My opinion on that opinion, yeah, that's right. Okay, with that, I'll close council comments. We'll move to item 5, which is final adoption of an ordinance amending zoning ordinance number 1253. The request is on the property of Firethorn Development LLC to a planned unit development concurrent with annexation to the city of Fairhope. This property is generally located at the south end of Hemlock Drive, Fairhope, Alabama. This was introduced at the July 23rd, 2018 City Council meeting.
And Council President, council members, thank you for having me back here. This will be the second reading of this item. And what we'll do tonight is just briefly reiterate the discussion from last time. And we'll, for everyone watching, we'll have everything via slideshow this time. And so we'll begin by describing the location. And this site lies as if Twin Beach Road, if it continued and crossed Highway 181 and it traversed to the east, it would be the last property before you encounter the golf course. And the next slide, and this is also in the agenda item in your packet, the blue outline area, this shows the relation of the property in relation to the rest of the greater Firethorn development. So this is on the southeast side. And this was an acquisition that the developer was able to acquire and then brought through the process for the PUD and the zoning creation. And so to reiterate the details we discussed last time, this request would be this final adoption would have it would also have a subdivision of 20 lots, cover 6.287 acres. That results in 3.19 units of density. That is the development density just for the phase. What that result is that the current development density of the greater Firethorn development is 1.8 units per acre. This would increase it slightly to 1.88 units per acre. And we talked last time about the compatibility analysis. We'll reiterate that here. And so what we do at the staff level, and this is simply a staff tool when we're evaluating these types of applications, we come up with a weighted average density of the study area. We also call it a buffer area surrounding the property. And that calculated to 2.55 units per acre. And so what we'll note here is though the individual phase here has a development density of 3.19 units per acre, and that is approximately 25% greater than the buffer area, the outside area. When factored as an entire development, that's approximately 26% less than that weighted average density of the greater area. And there is an error in the actual staff report where I had it backwards. It references 74%, but 26% is correct. And how that's derived is we now have a new online web tool. We can also do this in ArcGIS, but we have an online web tool now that anyone can utilize it's available off the City of Fairhope website. And so we draw a buffer around the property. For this example, we set it to a half mile, and that generated 650.91 acres. If you subtract the subject property, 6.287, that leaves you with 644.64. And one of the things we talked about last time was giving some more information on how they're derived. So what we do is we look at the actual development densities in that surrounding area, and we go by actual as well as allowable. So this chart shows the actual, and we go through all the different either developments or properties that make up that buffer that you saw previously. So for example, if you look at Quail Creek Estates, actual based upon the number of lots and the number of acreage, because you have a great deal of open space due to the golf course. That yields a development density of 0.85 units per acre. That rate, that density stays the same. Then we calculate, using our buffer tool, the actual acreage that falls within there to give us a unit count. And as you see at the bottom right there, once we calculate using all of the acreage, that gives you 2.36 units per acre actual. And similarly, this is the allowable for all the various properties. So this is derived
Can you
from
go back?
the zoning
Can you go back
ordinance.
to the chart?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You said actual
Yes, sir.
on this one.
Yes, sir.
Go down to the very last line, balance unzoned,
Yes, sir.
density is 2.9.
Yes, sir.
If I go to the, there was a picture you had with a circle, and there was a lower right-hand quadrant. In that lower right-hand quadrant, is that the balance of unzoned?
Yes, sir.
So its actual density is 2.9 per acre, right there?
So,
That looks like zero to me.
Well, and Council President, that's a good question, because when you're developing this, and this is not a hard and fast procedure, this is a staff-level procedure, you represent what would it be if it was developed. And so,
I thought that was the second chart.
well, we mirror the two right now. We mirror the two both in actual and allowable. And that's based upon if you take 43,560 square feet in an acre and divide it by 15,000 square feet, the minimum lot size required in either unzoned property in the Fairhope PDJ or also R1 has the same. That gives you that 2.9 units per acre. And so it's mirrored in the allowable. And the allowables, in addition to the unzoned areas, the R1s, are all based upon the lot size requirements of the zoning ordinance. So for example, and this is a zoning classification that can no longer be created in Fairhope, and that's the R3 PGH. You notice it's quite large, that's allowable, because those only require 4,000 square foot lots. And again, that is no longer an active zoning classification. When you combine that together, that gives you 2.73 units per acre for allowable. The average of the actual and the allowable yields the 2.55. And council members, using this procedure, this allows reproducible results, so that if in the process of reviewing a project there's a question about how something is calculated, virtually anyone can utilize this same web tool and generate different numbers. That way, if we had an evaluation that we needed to do at the Planning Commission level before we got in here, before we brought it before the City Council, we'd have data to analyze.
Well, Buford, I don't have a problem with the allowable weighted density, because that's what's allowed. That's pretty scientific. But when you go back to the balance of unzoned and you try to say that's what's actual, well, no, that's not what's actual. I don't follow you there. I mean, if somebody could buy all that land and put one home on there, and it might be, one residence per 20 acres.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
Understood.
are there, I don't see 2.9 there unless there's homes that are not shown in there. I don't have a problem with calling that actual.
Yes, sir.
Now, that's not saying I want to kill the deal, but.
Yes, sir.
I'm
Yes,
just
sir.
talking about the way you're presenting this.
Well,
It's
and-
actual. Actual to me means actual.
And council members, and Council President, that's a very good point. And certainly, like I said earlier, this is not a hard and fast rule.
Right.
It's a staff tool, and we will refine it in development, because you can always make it better. And as you see cases coming forward, we can certainly take that, we'll certainly take that as advisement. In addition, you may see in other future applications where we reduce down the buffer area to 1/4 mile if you have a more dense area. So this is something that can be adjusted. And so as we were saying, as calculated in this example here, that gives you 2.55 units per acre of weighted average development density in that buffer area. And so in addition, and we talked earlier about comparisons, the 1.88 and the 3.9 to that, some additional supporting data for you. We mentioned here about the comprehensive plan, because that's the overall development density around Twin Beach Estates. There is a commercial node contemplated by the comprehensive plan at that location. That overall increase is very minimal, so staff recommends that it's supported by the comprehensive plan. We'll also make some additional notes about the site itself. The subject property is entirely bordered on the east by the Quail Creek Golf Course. So that would be an open space. And so, of course, there's no existing development or potential development on the east side. It's bordered on the north by a green space and also a retention pond, and that creates an additional buffer from the existing properties. It's bordered on the south by a 60-foot wide power line easement, and there's an additional 60-foot buffer between the subject property and additional developable property. And then just a brief note about the subdivision case related to this case that has been approved by the Planning Commission. And so that case number, as you see on the screen right there, that was approved on the 7th of May by the Planning Commission. A couple of notes from that is the green space for the total development, including this new phase, that still gives 13% green space, which exceeds the 10% requirement of the subdivision regulations. Also, the drainage system for this one was reviewed with the assistance of the Public Works Director. We'll note there's an existing wetland to the south of this area that's preserved. This also provides additional buffering. There's also this one considers an additional vegetative buffer between Lot 12 and the power line easement where no structures could be constructed. It ends in a cul-de-sac because of the wetland nature, but we'll note here that you have existing connectivity to Stone Creek, which is in Phase 2 of the Firethorn development. And so the staff recommendation here is approval of the annexation to plan unit development, as stated in here, and I'll note that this will satisfy the remaining condition of approval of the subdivision case. There are no conditions of approval of this case. We'll note once again that the Planning Commission approved the rezoning to PUD and annexation on March 5th, 2018, and the first paragraph there just reemphasizes the statements we've made herein. And council members, Steve Pumphrey with Dewberry Engineers representing the developer, he is here to answer additional questions, and I'm happy to answer questions from the staff level.
Questions, council? Buford, the 13% green space, which exceeds the 10% required, is that exclusive of that retention pond that looks to be on the southwest corner of the property?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the subdivision regulations require that that your retention area is not factored into green space.
I guess I asked that question because if you look at the plat and you look at the lots, it seems to be the only thing left in that southwest corner. You have a common area, and so the buffer must, the green space must include that buffer area, is that right?
Yes, sir, and and also too is that we look at that as a function of the entire development. So if you add and consider the village at Firethorn as a part of the greater Firethorn development, that is where that 13% is derived.
And I appreciate the developer doing that. And council, the reason I bring that up is Buford and Wayne know I've rolled on to the Planning Commission, and one of the things that I've been harping on is it seems like many subdivisions that come before us have a retention that's always offset in a corner of a property kind of out of the way. And, you know, is that the way we want our Fairhope neighborhoods to look? It's just an afterthought. Let's stick it in the least usable place that we can. I don't know if that's the case here. Maybe that makes more sense to put it there, but, you know, are they really making an effort to make this an enjoyable PUD with some recreational area, or are we just checking the box and sticking a pond wherever we can, and it's the least developed, you know, the least expensive piece of property on the plat? If you don't look at the plats that come before the Planning Commission and think that, then you're not looking very hard.
And Council President, council members, we also at staff level are considering putting together some potential revisions to the subdivision regulations to make that more understandable and make that clearer on the wishes of the city and the subdivision regulations when we have those types of things.
Yeah.
And so clarify green space versus open space, modify that a bit more than is shown in those subdivision regulations right now.
And I do realize that they're in compliant as well.
Yes, sir.
In compliance, but as a council, I just kind of want to put that on your radar, that we should really be looking at our regulations, and I know that the planning department is looking at that for us.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, council? Any questions of the developer or the engineer? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for final adoption.
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second for final adoption. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, clerk, will you call the question?
Council President,
Aye.
place 3,
Aye.
place 4,
Aye.
place 5.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you, council. Item number 6 is the final adoption of an ordinance to approve an application from Coca-Cola Bottling Company Consolidated for a franchise agreement to operate beverage vending machines at the location specified in bid number 001-18, Beverage Concessions 2018. It is to be in the best interest of the public and the city of Fairhope to grant this franchise, introduced at the July 23rd city council meeting. Does anybody have any questions for city clerk regarding these vending machines? If not, I'm going to entertain a motion for final adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Clerk, will you call the question?
Council President,
Aye.
place 3,
Aye.
place 4,
Aye.
place 5.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you, council. Item 7 is the final adoption of an ordinance repealing and replacing ordinance number 1331, known as the impact fee ordinance, introduced at the July 23rd, 2018 city council meeting. And I know that we want to be briefed on this. Again, I did not cover that in the agenda meeting, so who will be the one to speak to us? Eric? Thank you.
Yes, Mayor, Council, this is an update to our impact fee ordinance that was, I believe, originally adopted in 2007. It did call for a reevaluation of that ordinance about every 3 to 4 years, and this is the first reevaluation we've done. We did have Tischler Bice, the consultant who did the original ordinance, go back and do an analysis of the metrics again and give us their analysis of where our impact fees should be. So this ordinance, it also covered a couple of things that our previous ordinance didn't, which did not clearly address renovations, infill construction, what happens when you have an existing building that's torn down and you build something much different or much larger. So we address those things in our ordinance revision, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions, council? I guess, Eric, there's a lot of language that's changed and clarified a lot of things, covered some things
Yes,
that
sir.
may have been missed in the past. The one question I have is I'm still trying to compare the fee schedule, new fee schedule that we are voting on, or asked to be voting on tonight versus the old fee schedule.
Yes, sir. You want me to
That's
go?
one of the things that's kind of hard to see from
Sure.
what's in our package. Is there
Sure.
any way that you could cover that?
I can. The way that the last fee schedule originally stated, it gave specific amounts that you were to charge for specific types of projects. For example, the previous ordinance said, we shall charge a $4,184 impact fee for all new residences. Well, the enabling legislation from the state says we can only charge a maximum of 1% of the cost. So if a home is built for $300,000, they were charged a $3,000 impact fee. It's either the number in the ordinance or the 1% max. So what part of the report that Tischler Bice did was they calculated use of roads, infrastructure, strain on Parks and Rec. I know that's something that's on the agenda. You know, the more people that move in, the more people that move in, you have more children, you have larger needs for rec programs and rec space. So they calculated all that in, and they gave us a new fee schedule based on the numbers they believe the data supports that we should charge. What we also added in there, though, was a percentage breakdown in case we default to the 1% max. So just as an example, the new ordinance says we shall charge $5,830 impact fee on new residential construction. Well, that'll be 1%, and it breaks it down to $879 for fire, $742 for police, $2,998 for Parks and Rec, $1,211 for transportation. So if we have a house that's worth less than $518,000 and we charge the 1%, we converted also those numbers to percentages. And that's an accounting thing for our city staff, so that when they see a $3,000 charge come in for a house, they will know what percentages to break that up.
But the single-family total prior was, how much did you say, 4,700?
$4,184.
So it's gone up.
It has gone up, yeah.
$1,700, assuming they exceed the 400.
That is correct.
17.
Yes, sir. The way that it was before, essentially, if you built a house in excess of $418,000, that was the cap you were going to pay. Now, residential impact, though, is not based on a 1%. If you look at the way they did the analysis, it's more based on the number of bedrooms, hence the number of people that will be in the house, because that's more vehicles, that's more trips on the road, that's more use of utilities. So what we did is, for specifically if someone tears down a home and builds a new one, if you tear down a 2-bedroom house, or, we'll get a default for a 3-bedroom house, you come back and build a 5-bedroom house, you will pay 40% of what that impact fee calculated at, because you got credit for a 3-bedroom home. Or if we inspect it and it's a 2-bedroom home and they build a 5-bedroom home, you'll pay 60%. As it is now, someone can tear down a 1,000-foot cottage and build a 4,000 square foot 2-story house, and they pay no impact fee because there was a previous building on the site. So we tighten that up in the ordinance to be able to cover those types of things.
So, and if you go through each one of these, line items,
Yes, sir.
single-family R3, multifamily, commercial, industrial, and so on and so forth, I guess what I was looking for was the new total, and I know that's subject to the 1%
It is.
limitation.
Yes, sir. So you want me to read those off real quick?
Yeah, if you don't
Okay,
mind.
sure.
I think we should know what the difference is.
Okay, and one of the other things, being a building code guy, the building code breaks down all types of building uses into code designations. So an R3 is a single-family residence. That total is $5,830, and it's divided amongst fire, police, parks and rec, and
No,
transportation.
we have the new.
This is the new. Oh, you want me to go through the old
I
one?
was curious what the old was.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, the old one was a little more, much more detailed. So what I'll do then, the old one, for single family, it was $4,184 was the max, or 1%. For all other residential housing, which would be duplexes, triplexes, and apartments, it was $3,280 per unit. So if you had a duplex, you'd pay $3,280 times 2.
Gotcha.
The other thing it previously did was it broke it down for commercial and shopping center, and then it had 6 subcategories: 10,000 square feet, 10 to 25, 25 to 50, and it gave different amounts in a descending order. They simplified that in the new fee schedule, and now if it is a commercial shopping, this is the fee, regardless of the size. This is the fee. And that is based on a 1,000 square foot area. So, currently, previously, if you had a commercial or shopping building, the previous fee was $7,707 per 1,000 square feet. So if you had a 5,000 square foot building, you paid $7,707 times 5, or the 1% max. And we always hit the 1% max before we hit the numbers in this ordinance, and that's probably going to be the case going forward.
Right. So that old commercial number, it's 5488 now. What was the old number for commercial?
For
7,000?
commercial. It depended, it actually had, for a commercial shopping center, it was $7,707. For an office or an institutional, which actually would cover a home or a healthcare facility where hospitals, things like that, those are institutional occupancies. That would have been $23.93 per 1,000 square feet. For a business park, it was previously $1,348 per 1,000 square feet. Industrial was $736 per 1,000. Warehouse was $524 per 1,000. and then manufacturing was $403 per 1,000 square feet. And then down at the end, if you had a
Is that lodging?
hotel or lodging, that's for transient use. It's going to be a hotel or a boarding house where it's transient use. That was $595 per unit.
Council, do you see what I'm looking at here?
It's an increase in all of, it's based
Well,
on their
like
calculation,
lodging
everything
is,
went up.
You know, a max, well, it was $595, and now it's $2,669.
Yeah. And a lot of that, you know, if you go through, it is, and I'll also say, you know, we had the discussion with Tischler Bice, you know, the mayor and Richard Johnson and Wayne, and we had a meeting with them, and we had a conference call with them. And our original intention was possibly to shift some of the percentages. You know, if, on a residence, if rec is getting 54% and streets are getting 20%, we thought, well, why don't we shift rec to maybe 45% and that remainder go to transportation. They were very specific that the numbers they gave us had to be the numbers because there are a lot of legalities that go into impact fee ordinances and the charges for impact fees. And that, in their opinion, as probably the largest firm doing this, those were the justifiable numbers and percentages based on the market data and the demographic research that they did for Fairhope.
Eric, on the lodging, do we typically hit that 1% max?
To be honest with you, I have not, in the 6 years I've been back, I haven't had a hotel. I'm hoping we get some, but I have not had one. You know, we've got several multifamily complexes that are going on. We've got apartments that are going on in the north end of town. We've got duplexes and triplexes that are being built on the south end of town. The apartments will be calculated, well, it depends. They haven't picked up their permit yet. Actually, let me back up. They'll have to pay impact fees anyway, but they submitted their building permit before this adoption. And I want to make clear, this will affect any building permits submitted after the ordinance goes into effect. That's the trigger, is when they submit for a building permit. Okay, because we stamp it in and we log it in when it comes in. And if this ordinance is effective at that time, they will be subject to the new rates.
Council, any questions for Mr. Cortines?
I met with Eric Friday, kind of talked through some of my concerns.
You comfortable?
Everything, yeah. Clarifies a lot of issues that were in the old ordinance.
Okay. Anybody else have any statements, comments, questions? Okay. There are no more comments. I'll entertain a motion for final adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for final adoption. Any further discussion? That was a lot of work, Eric, and we thank Tischler Bice, and I asked you a lot of questions, and I think most of that's going to be capped by that 1%, but we're going to be caught by that. But anyway, all right, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. Clerk, will you call the question?
Council President?
Aye.
Place 3,
Aye.
place 4,
Aye.
place 5.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Item 8 is an ordinance establishing a municipal procurement card program for certain officers and employees of the city of Fairhope. Treasurer Michael Henson covered this in detail at our last work session and also at tonight's work session. Does anybody want me to bring Mr. Henson up for any further questions on this? Council, do you have any comments on this?
I think we covered it well during the work session.
Okay. Mr. Boone, Mr. Brown?
Good.
Any questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for
Introduce.
the adoption. Pardon me?
Introduce it.
Oh, yeah. Somebody introduce that.
I'll introduce the ordinance.
Okay. We'll introduce it. Actually, we'll let it lay over unless we have a motion for immediate consideration. I'm sorry, I was thinking final adoption. We got on that roll there. So we'll let that lay over until the next council meeting, as we typically do. Item number 9 is a resolution. The City Attorney Marcus McDowell and City Clerk Lisa Hanks are authorized to send a request for an Attorney General's opinion regarding Alabama law on the following questions. Now, before I read all of this, I wanted to address some concerns. On the radio this morning, I was asked, why I had put this on the agenda. And the truth of the matter is that the council did not put this on the agenda. The council didn't ask for this opinion, and I believe it was the mayor that asked for this to be put on the agenda, and I didn't see a reason to deny a question being put on the agenda, so I allowed it to remain on the agenda. And when I told you I was going to give you an opinion on an opinion, here's that opinion. In my own, the way I read the state statute, there was not a question in my mind as to whether or not we needed to even get an opinion on this. I thought the answer was clear, that the citizens simply put forward a legitimate petition with the properly required signatures, a proper number of signatures, and when that happens, we hold an election. And then I thought the next step was, if the new form of government passes, the way I read it was that the city council at that point in time chooses whether or not the council members are elected by district or at large. That wasn't a question that I had, and I did not have any council members even ask that question. So the city council hasn't tried to bias this vote or opinion one way or the other. But if the mayor wants a clarification on a question as to something that's supposed to be on a ballot, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think there are people probably on both sides of the aisle. There are probably those that signed the petition thinking that it's going to be districts, and there may be people that signed that petition thinking it's going to be at large. I think the greater question is can you have an election on a total change in the form of government without knowing what the final government looks like, whether that be districts or at large? And so I think it's almost, it may even be proper to challenge the statute as to whether or not you can even have the election at all, because people don't ultimately know what they're getting. They're voting on a change of government. Some people thinking that they want it one way ultimately with districts, and some people thinking that they want it at large. So that's a long way of saying that I don't think the council has taken a stance on this at all. I don't think that we plan on it. But, and I really don't even know that a resolution was required to get an AG opinion. I think the mayor probably could have sent a letter up there and said, I want an opinion on this without council. But then the clerk told me that there was statutes that say if you want an official opinion from the AG, we have to pass a resolution.
I actually contacted Ward Beeson prior to coming into the meeting, and he said that a resolution was required by the council.
Okay. So if you go back to, if you read through a lot of this legal gobbledygook is what I'm going to call it. Sorry, Marcus, that's kind of what it is. The question comes down to, it says, does the petition process contained in the Council Manager Act, as amended by Act 2018-569, permit the adoption of the council manager form of government by petition to consist of council members elected at large as the legislature provided for in section, you can read that for yourself, or does the petition process only provide pursuant to section 1143A8A for election of council members in single member districts? I think that question can be asked, but I think that the answer was it's going to come back that you just simply choose whether you want to change, and then the council is going to decide that for you. Is that was my understanding. I'll ask the city attorney if he has any other comments, or did he read it any other way, or?
It can be read that way. The question that we had was whether or not the petition itself is defective because it doesn't specify one or the other, and whether or not the act itself is constitutionally vague, unconstitutionally vague, because it doesn't tell you have to have a petition one way or the other.
Right. Well, and then the second question says, if the petition submitted after adoption of the said act do not specify whether council members will be elected at large or in single-member districts, are the petitions legally valid and due to be counted? Well, I don't know if I had to answer that question. I would say yes, it was a legally valid petition because the judge of probate set an election date and said that we must have the election. But that was my opinion on those questions. But like I said before, these were put on the agenda at the request and urging of the mayor, and I think that we can ask the questions, although the answers may come back a little bit different than being yeah, they're going to be this or they're going to be that. It may come back that the statute states that it will be done this way. Does anybody
Can I
else have
speak real quick?
Pardon?
Can I speak?
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't word this, I just asked for, a way to get an AG opinion from Matt. He put this together a long time ago, and he met with Marcus, or y'all talked, and Tut, so I'm assuming that y'all read this too. The only question that, yes, this is a lot of wording, but they're going to be, regardless of how you word it, they're going to come up with an AG opinion. I do think at the very least, that's what's going to be needed for something this big. I don't think it can be determined. I mean, the probate judge didn't want to determine it. And, really the AG opinion, it's better to even get possibly a court to make that opinion. I think Tut's the one that suggested that. So this is really, it's not for any of us. It's so that the citizens know clearly what they're voting on. I don't think you can have a vote unless this is clarified. Because people will vote, if you vote on something and then that decision's going to be made by council, whether or not it's at large or by district, people are not going to know how to vote because they might vote against it. If it's by, you know what I mean?
That's
So
the point I
just,
made, yeah, exactly.
I think it's just the right thing to do for the citizens.
And council, I don't want to speak for all of you. Does anybody else have a difference of opinion in what I'm reading into this?
I wasn't sure how to take it, to be honest with you. Like you said, we got the email saying that the petition was invalid because it didn't clarify whether it was at large or district. And that was the last I'd heard until this resolution.
So Mr. McDonald put in most of the language on this, Mayor, is that correct?
No, I said that Matt discussed it with
I
y'all.
haven't seen the language in this petition at all, until Lisa sent it to us.
Okay, I mean, when Matt put it together, because I wanted to make sure, what we should ask for.
Why is
He-
Matt putting it together instead of the city?
Well, I mean, actually, when I wanted to get this done, Mr. McDowell was out of town, so.
Okay. I think that's something.
But I
that
did
we're gonna
ask
have to
Matt
take
after he
on.
put it together to discuss it with,
It's something else we're going to have to eventually look at, is the role of Mr. McDonald and his firm in taking on the role of almost an additional city attorney, when I always thought that their role was to litigate for us and not give us opinions or long resolutions to be submitted to the Attorney General. So I think we're going to have to, counsel, I've been putting that comment off for a long, long time, but that's something that's going to have to be addressed in the very near term as to what their role is in this city, because our legal bills are getting very steep, and it's things
the
that,
legal bills are getting steep because of duplicate, work on Marcus's end too. So it's, if he's doing litigation, so is Marcus, and that's being duplicated. That's actually what the biggest loss is, or the biggest expense.
So what happens if this resolution doesn't pass?
Then you'll have to answer to the citizens on why.
We've got an election coming in October,
I mean, that would be,
and it's on exactly what the petition asked for.
well, and the
that's what
petition
the
is
judge said.
strictly to, the petition that was valid was strictly whether or not to change the form of government, when I read it, strictly that. Is that correct, Mr. Zahn?
I gave.
Yeah, let's be honest, I mean, because, right, this is it. And it basically says that it would be a city council composed of 5 members, including a mayor and 4 other council members, and doesn't make any reference to.
May I make it?
Yes, you may. You want to approach, since I asked the question? Yes, sir.
I want to make it very clear that Fresh Start Fairhope does not oppose asking the Attorney General for an opinion on these issues. And in fact, I read to you earlier a suggestion of how we think the question ought to be phrased. What we object to is the convoluted language in the resolution as it is stated in your agenda work paper because we believe it constitutes an extreme bias that I already described to you. We suggest that our petition is very simple and straightforward, and therefore, if you have a question or questions you want to ask the Attorney General, then ask very simple and straightforward questions. Don't try to put a lot of spin on it like that is contained in the draft. And we agree with you that at least our reading of the law is that the law is silent on the question of should the City Council make its determination of at-large versus district before the referendum or after. We would prefer that you made that decision before the referendum so that everybody knows in total what they're voting for. But our reading of the law is that it's the City Council that makes that determination. But again, we're not the lawyers and we're not the Attorney General. We have no problem with you going to them, but please ask simple, straightforward questions and show them the case at hand. Show them the petition and say, this is what we're going to have an election on October the 2nd. Won't you please answer these simple questions about it, rather than all of this, as you call it, gobbledygook, as I called it, pettifogging, that's in the draft.
I guess the question is, and I'll ask the city attorney and the council, is there a way to pare this down to very simple, unbiased questions of the Attorney General? You know,
You've got a petition that's already been certified by the probate court. We've got an election in October based on that one question. And the Act doesn't say anything about the authority of council to amend that petition to say one way or the other.
I don't think anybody's asking any questions about the petition. I think, let me give you an example of one question. No, you could ask the question, does the council have the authority prior to the election to determine, or should that be placed on the ballot, or does the council have the authority after the election to determine whether there'd be districts or at-large?
There's no mechanism in there that I'm aware of that allows you to change the petition that's been certified.
Well, the petition simply was changing the form of government.
That's right, but when you're changing it to either be at-large or a single member, you're changing the petition. As you've seen, you got two different factions in town with regard to which way they want.
I don't follow you, Mr. Attorney. I don't follow how my question impacts the change of government. We're simply trying to ask whether or not we could determine before people vote how it would, whether there would be districts or at-large, or if we are required to determine after the vote whether it be at-large.
Can I say something, Council President? The petition was given to the probate judge, and the probate judge sent it to me with the wording for the ballot, and it does not say at-large or districts.
And that's what my question
It's
was.
probably going to take a court order to get that changed.
Well, that was going to be my question, was if we ask for an Attorney General's opinion and we get that back, is the next step going to be that we all are sitting back in here and saying, well, now we've got this opinion, but we really need a court order? I mean, do we need to just bypass the AG opinion and go straight?
I spoke to
court
Ward
order.
Beeson, that's why I was late for the work session, and he said that there is no way that we will get his opinion back before the ballots are supposed to be printed. August 21st is the deadline for the ballots to be printed, and absentee voting starts August 28th.
Council President, if I could make one
I
additional.
want to say one thing, though, real quick. Clerk, I think you and I are saying the exact same thing. I realize the petition was only to change the form of government.
Correct.
But I'm only saying that people, are they going to know before or after? That would be a potential question to ask them, as opposed to whether or not the petition was valid. I thought the petition was valid.
If I might make
Yes.
one more remark, the one thing that the law is very clear upon is that the election, based on the petition, cannot occur more than 90 days after it was validated by the probate court. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Which
The
is
only thing-
October 2nd.
And so therefore, I respectfully ask that you reject any suggestions that the election be delayed, because we will be in a position then where we'll have to try and fight you on that, because we believe that October the 2nd is about the latest date that this election can be held.
Mr. Zonk, what was, when your petition was passed around, what was the intention of it? I mean, Why wasn't it worded on there? whether it was-
Because the primary issue that we have always discussed in our meetings and and the issue that we saw was, saw that the current form of government, weak mayor, strong council, is defective as a system. When it was instituted in 2004, ever since then, it's just been one problem after another, and no strategic issues have been addressed to move this city forward. And so we attacked the system, and we believe that what should happen is we should have a council-manager form of government. The issue of district versus at-large was brought up by a competing petition. That was never our issue in the first place. We're neutral on whether it should be at-large or district. We just simply want a change in government, and that's the petition we gave you, and that's the petition we expect that there be a referendum on October the 2nd.
I'd like to speak to that. The competing petition that you're referring to is actually the petition that the judge of probate put together.
No, it's the petition you circulated. It was your
That
effort.
he gave to
It
me
was
and
your
said that
effort.
he.
It was your effort.
Don't interrupt me,
was a
please.
draft.
This
That
is
was-
my, this
that
is what
was a
I'm
draft.
going to have,
That was just a draft, Mayor.
I'd like to have a moment without being interrupted. The judge of probate gave me a petition. He said, this is what I put together for the petition. It's not my petition. This came directly from him, so I'm not sure why it's called a competing petition. Secondly, the petition that one of y'all sent to him before you did the second one stated in their petition, this petition is for a council voted at large. And the judge of probate stated, you cannot circulate that. So that's why you ended up putting the petition in as a general statement. It is believed by several attorneys that I've spoken with that any petition that is put together by citizens and signed with 10% creates districts. That the only portion of that bill that the amendment affected was that council had an additional way to create a different form of government without having to go through a petition. That's the only part of the amendment that's new. Any petition from the people creates districts. Now, I've had multiple attorneys talk to me, including some at the AG's office. So if you don't get an AG opinion, that's fine, but if you want to get even a better opinion, then maybe it should go to court. But regardless, you're doing this for the citizens so they know what they're voting on. I don't know what the argument is. People need to know what they're voting on.
And we believe it's very straightforward. What the people are voting on is to change their system of government from what it is now to a council-manager form of government.
It's
All
not
right,
that
we're
so,
gonna-
though,
we're gonna-
if
We're going
it's,
to close this down. Thank you, Mr. Zonk. Thank you, Mayor. Council, let's make some decisions on this. I was reading number 2 again as Mr. Zonk and the Mayor were talking and others were talking, that, if you look at the second question, it just says, if the petition submitted after the adoption do not specify whether or not they will be elected at large or in single-member districts, which I believe it did not specify, then it simply says, how are council members to be elected and when, and how will that determination be made by that municipality? I don't see any harm in that question.
Yeah, that's it.
So just ask that one question.
That's it, just number 2.
Number 2, to me, number 2 sums it up to me.
Right.
I think number 2 is the only question that needs to be asked.
why not get all of the questions asked? I mean, we're asking their opinion on the whole. I think send in the petition that Chuck Zunk wants. I mean, the questions and this one. The questions
I don't have a
don't
strong
really matter.
objection. I don't have a strong objection to the first question.
I'm just saying, whatever questions you ask, they're just going to evaluate how this law is stated to clarify it for the citizens.
Council, I will entertain a motion to pass this resolution, item 9, asking the 2 questions. I'll read those questions again. I'll skip some of that stuff that prefaces the questions. It says, does the petition process containing the council manager Act of 1982 as amended by Act 2018-569 permit the adoption of the council manager form of government by petition to consist of council members elected at large as the legislator provided for in Section 11-43A-1.1, or does the petition process only provide pursuant to Section 1143A 8A for election of council members in single-member districts? And then the second one, if petitions submitted after the adoption of the Act 2018-569 do not specify whether council members will be elected at large or in single-member districts, are the petitions legally valid and due to be counted? If they are valid and due to be counted, how are council members to be elected, and when and how will that determination be made by the municipality? We've had a lot of discussion. I will entertain a motion, or if somebody doesn't want to make the motion, that's fine. If somebody wants to amend that motion, but I'll entertain a motion to ask the AG those questions.
I've got a follow-up question, I guess.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So knowing that this deadline is looming October 2nd, and Lisa's saying that the AG's office can't get a response to us before that time period, what is?
No, it's not before that time period. It's before the
the
ballots
August,
are printed.
which is August 21st. Okay, yeah, that's only 8 days from now. So what do we need to be doing in light of that?
Well, if we're required to ask these questions by resolution, then I mean, it's just, do you agree with the questions? Do you think they need to be asked? I don't know. My personal opinion is I don't see the harm in asking the questions.
I don't see the harm in asking, but if we're not going to meet the deadline, then what do we do?
Well, that's just printing ballots. I mean, they may come back and say, it needs further study. I don't know what they're going to say.
Yeah.
But I think if for the citizens to know, have a chance of knowing, and they may not. They may say, no, it's well, I read the statute, it said the council decides after it passes.
That's how I read it.
That's how I read it. So they may come back and say, well, you won't know until after the election, and the council decides. That's one plausible answer, but I can't speak for them.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, to ask both the questions?
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion to ask the questions 1 and 2. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, 3-1 vote. Clerk, I believe it passed. Questions will be asked. Thank you. Okay, item number 10 is a resolution that Mayor Karen Wilson is hereby authorized to execute agreement between the City of Fairhope and the State of Alabama, acting by and through the Alabama Department of Transportation for installation, maintenance, and operation of a traffic signal at the intersection of US 98 and South Drive in Fairhope, Alabama. Approves the funding and painting of the upgrade of the uprights and arms with a not-to-exceed amount of $6,000. Can I entertain a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions for Mr. Johnson? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes. Item 11 is a resolution. City Council hereby authorizes Mayor Karen Wilson to negotiate a purchase price for 40 acres of property in the Twin Beach area available for the Recreation Department, and bring this back to the City Council for approval and to authorize the use of impact fees for the purchase. Council, I guess I would say that if you're just looking for the price, but then you're authorizing the use of impact fees for the purchase, shouldn't that be left
That should be left off.
left out until after we approve the purchase of the property?
Yes.
I'm not comfortable with the way it's written. And would somebody, if you're so willing, amend the resolution to say just, stop that resolution and bring back to the City Council for approval, and then strike out to authorize the use of impact fees for purchase? If we approve the purchase, we can always say that impact fees will be used for the purchase.
I'll amend it.
All right.
Okay?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to amend the resolution as written. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in approve of amending the resolution as written, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, resolution is amended. Okay, council, I'll now ask you to approve the amended resolution that authorizes the mayor to negotiate the purchase price for the 40 acres of property.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'll just say that I know Tom spent a lot of time looking at different properties, and I would say, obviously, the important question is to find out what we could get this for as far as price, but the size, the location, and even the topography, I think are all very favorable for this property. So, having been out there and seen it, I know we're going to need more ball fields in the future. If you've ever been to opening day at the soccer fields or at the baseball fields, they're busting at the seams, and it's just a matter of time before we'll need to use this. Probably need it before we can ever get it actually converted and built out. So I'm in favor of it.
All right. We have a motion and a second, clerk.
Yes, you do.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes. Item 12 is a resolution. The City Council approves the selection of Impact Public Affairs Consulting to perform public relations writing for various projects within the city for Economic and Community Development Department, and hereby authorizes Mayor Karen Wilson to negotiate a fee schedule and establish a not-to-exceed limit with this firm. Does anybody want a brief overview of that? I believe Paige had gone through this at the work session. Kind of satisfied my curiosity about that and why we were needing that. Any questions for her? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve this selection.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. The only thing I'd like to say is that, we kind of argued over whether or not we have an economic development department in the city. I don't have a problem with it, with the writing projects, and we could call it a department, but it's what's in a name, so if anybody has any heartache with that, let me know. If not, we have a motion and a second. I'll ask all those in favor to please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes. Item 13 is a resolution. The Mayor Karen Wilson is hereby authorized to execute a contract with Goodwin Mills Kaywood Incorporated to perform professional engineering services for project number 4, Fells Avenue Lift Station Rehabilitation for the Sewer Department with a not-to-exceed amount of $67,585.
So
Okay.
moved.
Mayor and
Oh,
council, Richard asked me to speak to this. I've actually worked on this lift station about 100 times myself. We approved something a month or so back, not to exceed, this is just the first phase of this, $67,000 is needed to design it. There's also $15,000 added in that by Richard to upgrade the sewer ordinances, which are way overdue, to bring us up to speed on that. Is there any questions you have?
So the services alone to bring this lift station up to where it needs to be is $67,000.
Yes. I know that's high. It came in a little bit higher than what I thought it would, but we did cut down, and I know this sounds ludicrous, but we cut down quite a bit out of it. It was close to $400,000 when we started. We cut it down. We were going to do our own landscaping. We're going to do our own fence building stuff. This is in a park. It's going to have to look right. The whole lift station is going to have to be moved over. We're going to do our own abandoning of the lift station. We're going to run the electrical service to it. We're going to provide the SCADA. I've cut this thing to the bone.
So if you look at the project estimate in your books, council, it's about $349,000. So $67,000, call it 70, is about 20% of that $349,000. And typical professional engineering services should be around 10 to 15%.
Well, we take $15,000 out of it for the ordinances. We asked,
what now?
We asked them to go in and redo our ordinance as part of it, so that there's a $15,000 in there for the ordinances. Do you see that?
To change
Our sewer ordinances are way behind.
Okay.
The upgrades, what pipes we use, what connections we use, that type thing. And so it's just to bring that up to speed.
I got you. Thank you for pointing that out.
So I think we're really close to that figure you
About
were talking about.
15%.
Yeah.
So you get down to, 42,000. Yeah. That's a much better number.
You like that?
I like it better. I don't like
okay.
spending any money, you know that. But
I know that,
I
I
like
know
that a lot
that, I know
better.
that. Does anybody, I mean, the lift station itself, so we're all clear about this, is an in-ground station. It's the only in-ground station that we have self-prime pumps in. They're not typical. I don't know why this was put in, all these years ago, but it's a very unsafe condition to work in. I've been in it myself 15 to 20 times over the years, and it's just a horrible working condition. And it's due for an upgrade right now. We need a pump in it right now, and I'm trying to hold off. I do not want to even think about going down there and putting in a pump.
I guess I'm still trying to find this help with our ordinance. I just don't see it in there yet. Can someone point that out to me? Am I missing that somewhere?
It should be in there.
The 15,000 to help us with our ordinances?
Council, and if it's not in the ordinance, I apologize for that, but I thought since we're trying to create a set of specifications that offer some competition among suppliers, and we have a wide variety of applications for different lift stations, and since this is a lift station project, I thought it'd be a good idea to go ahead and get a standard specification
there.
prepared that would be for lift stations that would come through the planning commission.
I see that in
It's-
service.
it's in there.
Third line there, lift
It's
station
in there under the
specifications.
memo, it's in there under services and costs.
Okay.
Well, it's in there under lift station specifications update, not to exceed, and it's a not to exceed amount.
Right.
Yes.
So I think that ought to be stated that in a not to exceed, it is a not to exceed amount in the resolution.
Good.
Okay. But that doesn't necessarily say it's in our ordinances. It says in the lift station specifications update.
Well, I may have misspoken. I apologize.
Yeah, okay. That makes more sense.
All right.
Because we get Lisa to write ordinances a lot cheaper than that. Not much cheaper, but, okay, where are we, Lisa? Do we have a resolution yet? Do we have a motion and a second yet?
No, you do not.
So
Council,
moved.
I'll entertain, okay, we have a motion to approve the selection with a not-to-exceed amount of $67,585. Do we have a second?
Second?
Or actually, to not select, but to execute the contract. We have a second? Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right.
Thank you.
Motion
Thank you very
passes.
much.
Thank you. Item 14 is a resolution that Mayor Karen Wilson is hereby authorized to execute a contract with Hummingbird and South to perform professional advertising and public relations for the Economic and Community Development Department with a not-to-exceed amount of $8,812.50. Paige, are you going to speak to that as well? I know we talked about this in the work session, and this was to design brochures, and I believe there's also going to be maybe some video content that we're going to use, I had heard.
No, well, this is also going to be kind of for a consistent theme, design, for us to use throughout our branding. Any kind of brochures that we're using, any kind of video components that we put together. So this isn't the video itself. This is going to be using,
So this is branding, so we were talking about logos and things like that for the city?
correct. So
Okay.
this is going to be in addition to a layout and design for that piece that we were talking about, that we use, that bi-monthly piece. So,
Okay. That the other person's going to be writing in.
correct.
Council, do you have any questions for Paige? None at all? Okay. All right, if I hear no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve this funding.
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Or is the council going to be allowed to look at, concepts? Are they going to come back and say, this is, concept A, B, C, and D, and, y'all get to pick which one y'all want? Or are they just going to, you know, draw up another sign with the city of Fairhope on it, and it's gonna be different colors and,
No,
or
we're
whatever it
gonna,
is, and then they go with it? What
Sherry Lee said we would be,
a part of that process, and we're gonna have a group of stakeholders, that being, our downtown merchants and, y'all as well as city staff that will all be involved in that, so.
Okay. All right, we're gonna vote on this. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, one thing you got to consider, when you start changing this logo, is everything in the city's got to be changed.
well, I don't think we're changing the city seal.
City seal is copyrighted.
So I don't think we'd be changing that. This is just kind of changing, coming up with a uniform brand on publications for
Correct.
PR type stuff.
Website, any kind of publications we do, across the board. We do water quality report tests, we do everything, you name it, our annual visitors guide, different things that we're going to want a cohesive look on.
There was something in everyone's box today. I just happened to grab it right before that kind of goes over what would be changed, if you want to pass that down so they can see what it might. You see that kind of publication.
Okay, all right, we have a motion and a second right now. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
We get that part? Weak. All those opposed, say nay. Councilman Brown, did you vote yea or nay?
Yeah, I didn't, sorry, I didn't answer.
Okay, that was a yea. I think that was unanimous.
It was.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paige. Item 15 is a resolution. The City Council rescinds Resolution Number 3122-18 and authorizes the purchase of 10 marine pedestals for the Fairhope docks from High Power that serves 2 vessels per pedestal with a total cost of $11,524.88 and recommends a budget amendment for the same.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll just say that we did discuss this in work session, and I think that this is the right move, and I think it's actually a really good price for these pedestals. So that, I recommend approval. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes. Thank you, council. Item 16 is a resolution to award the bid to Red Pest Solutions of the Southeast Incorporated for pest control 2018 for the city of Fairhope with a total bid proposal with an annual cost not to exceed $13,768.04. Budgeted amount, council, standard procedure here. I'll entertain a motion for passage.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to award for Red Pest Solutions. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes. Thank you, council. Item 17 is a resolution to award a bid to Gaillard Builders Incorporated for the pool building facade repair for the rec department with a total bid proposal of $155,936. Mr. Peterson, does anybody recall what that was estimated to be so long ago when we started looking at that, when that all fell?
I know that the original bid we received, that it was within 3 weeks of my being here, and it didn't have any ventilation that I felt like was required, and had a lot of potential for change orders because of the existing framing that was going to be intact with the demolition. But we rejected those bids, and those bids were in the $180,000 range. This bid's, $155,000, and then I think I sent y'all plans at one time. It may have been several months ago now, but we're looking to save a little bit of money by treating the west and the south part of that soffit as just part of the metal building extension of the wall, and then just using whatever cantilever of the roof system is as a vented soffit there. And then on the east side that faces 98 and the north side where the pool is, we're doing an EFIS type system.
Okay, so there will be more than just that west wall where the...
Oh, absolutely. It's the whole soffit around the whole building.
Jimmy, I don't know about you, but on these types of things, don't you just kind of look to your left?
Oh, yeah.
For Robert to give a nod, or Kevin
Yeah.
to give, those construction guys to tell us what to do on this?
Pretty much.
Quit asking questions.
You know, I got to ask some questions. Y'all never ask, so I got to ask.
How much of a nod do you need?
2. All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve this award to Gale
So
Yard
moved.
Builders.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Thank you.
Resolution passed. Thank you. Item 18 is a resolution to award a bid to Ammons and Blackman Construction for citywide resurfacing and striping project for the Public Works Department with a total bid proposal of $344,304.25. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir. This is our citywide resurfacing for 2018, as well as we included the striping. We had earlier sought a price from the county, and they came back in excess of $25,000. And in this package, the low bidder brought the striping, the same striping in at $15,748. We had a $250,000 placeholder for this project. We also are specifying that 18,652.20 would be out of the street and material landscaping, which we would have paid for the striping out of if we'd done it as a separate project with the county. And then we're asking to go ahead and cover the rest of these with $74,902.75 out of the 4 and 7 cent gas fund, which can be used for repair and resurfacing of city roads.
Any questions? Mr. Johnson? You may be like me, we have a slightly different number on that green sheet.
Yes, my original breakdown, she caught a little error in it. It's not a big error, but that's roughly the distribution,
We'll be-
yes.
I guess we'll be voting on the numbers that are in here. The bottom line number should be the same if we have to adjust those others.
I trust Jillian, so.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Mr. Johnson? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve this expense for the citywide resurfacing and striping.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 19 is a resolution, the City of Fairhope vote to procure the city's Munis software annual maintenance for the IT department from Tyler Technologies as sole source distributor and authorizes procurement based on the option allowed by the Code of Alabama. Contractual services and purchases of commodities for which there is only one vendor or supplier, and contractual services and purchases of personal property which by their very nature are impossible to award by competitive bidding. The cost will be $45,361.07. Entertain a motion to approve this purchase.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would anybody like to have Jeff come in and explain this? It's our annual maintenance contract, and it is the amount budgeted. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes, thank you. Item 20 is a resolution, the City of Fairhope vote to procure a 6,000 capacity Tier 4 final compliant diesel forklift for the warehouse. The equipment is available for direct procurement through the Sourcewell Purchasing Co-op and therefore does not have to be let out for bid. It's already been nationally bid through the Sourcewell's bid process. The cost is $35,778. And Mr. Johnson, you said that there was a story on this?
Yes, it kind of was prompted, Maurice, who is the warehouse manager, remember we had a little tropical storm threat back over Memorial Day, and at that time, the forklift that they have was broken down, and he was worried that we needed to do something about the forklift situation before we get into a real storm. And since it affects all of us because, the ability to quickly unload and load heavy equipment. And here was the problem. For whatever reason, $18,000 was budgeted for procurement of a forklift for this year's budget. We did, at the time, when we started looking at our options, a local Caterpillar dealer did have 2 used ones. The cheapest was $22,000, the most expensive was $24,000, but they really weren't of the size and specifications that we would use. And so the purchasing department and the procurement and the warehouse was pretty adamant that they would like to at least have you consider the purchase of a new one that would meet the specification and needs. And basically, if that's not agreeable tonight, what we would propose is that we would encumber the 18,000, have 18,000 in the next budget so we can get and replace it. I think the fact that this is a warehouse forklift probably has a 20-plus service year life, because that's what we've gotten out of the current one, a little bit more than that. Really the cost of ownership at new is about $1,800 a year. And I volunteered to come and at least make the argument on behalf of purchasing that if they would prefer to have the piece of equipment in place before we really get into hurricane season, which is right upon us. But that's the consideration before you, but it would be $18,000 more than what's currently in the budget for the procurement of a forklift. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions. Will this be typically used outdoors or indoors?
And this has been a discussion, no, it is the warehouse. Now, it does come out on the apron to unload trucks, but it's not driven around the city or anything like that. No, it is.
The reason I'm getting at that is, would it be better to be propane powered as opposed to diesel powered? And I don't know that you can get 8,000 out of propane powered. You're kind of pushing it there, but.
And I trust Clint and Maurice and Randy, that they were very opinionated about it. The problem with the propane is that that's a dual fuel unit. I mean, it has a propane tank and they were adamant that those were problematic. So they wanted to stick with the diesel, which has the most reliability. I don't know enough about forklifts to know how if that is a correct statement, but they were pretty adamant to go with the diesel model only, not a dual fuel, which I understand. I don't think you can get just at least according to what I was told, you can't just get a propane only operating machine, so.
Well, and just what my recent experience is just about every facility that I go to now is they're propane powered. Now, there's some limitations to them as far as capacity, but I think that you can find it. And I didn't know if it was cost prohibitive. I mean, and there may be,
And I will tell you, one of the points that Clint made is that maybe there is a singular propane, but they did not want that. They'd have to choose a dual fuel, because understand, if we were in a response crisis where we don't have propane at the city, we can't recharge it. So we had to have the dual fuel, so we had to put diesel, and I think their argument was everybody has had disastrous results maintenance-wise and serviceability-wise as the dual fuel. So that's why their position was stick with diesel, because sitting right out in front of the warehouse is a diesel fuel dispenser. And that was their point, and it seemed very valid when they made it.
I worry about the health of those people that are inside that building breathing that diesel, though.
That's true, and of course, it is the doors are kept open during operation hours and things like that, but that was their recommendation, so.
Okay. Well, the second question I have is, where do you propose to get the additional monies for this, roughly $20,000?
I do not have an answer to that question. I don't think they have it in their budget anywhere that it can be pilfered from. Generally, when we get to a tight like this, we go to Richard Peterson and ask utilities to cover that part, so.
Yeah, there we go. Taking out of that 15,000 for the service for the lift station upgrades. All right. Council, I'll entertain a motion to grant this purchase.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I just ask you to go 18,000 light on the budget for whatever it is you're going to ask for next year.
Yes, sir.
Budget, because we are close to that. And it does look like the mistake was made in putting in a really low number that wasn't
Realistic.
feasible.
Yes, sir.
I'll be Googling those, though, finding out. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 21 is a resolution the City Council hereby adopts a set of sequences for the appointment of an interim chief of police and a chief of police for the city of Fairhope. Council, I will go back to tab 21, just read these. It states, item 1 is that the City Council will be accepting applications from in-house, in other words, Fairhope police officers only, until Monday, August the 20th, 2018 at 5 p.m. That's approximately a week from today. And also that the City Council will conduct interviews on Friday, August the 24th, beginning at 9 a.m. in 45-minute increments with an executive session after the last interview. Item 3 is that the city council will name and appoint an interim chief of police by the following Monday, August the 27th, at the applicant's current salary. And 4, that the city council will appoint a chief of police no later than 6 months after interview at a salary range of grade 28. Other than the changes in the dates, these were exactly the sequence of events that we were going to adopt when we convinced the chief to stay a little while longer anyway. So, do you have any questions about that?
Yeah, question on the permanent naming of a chief, 6 months from the date of naming an interim chief?
It says no later than, so at any time up to that, we
Okay.
could, if we so choose. The thinking was that it would give the council adequate time to evaluate the performance, and it would also give whomever the interim chief is adequate time to decide whether or not that job is for them. Because if we're talking about naming an interim chief, and we're only taking applications from in-house policemen and women, then it's only fair to them to say, well, it's up to 6 months, because they have a right to say, I'd rather go back to what I was doing before I became the chief, because this is more than I thought, or this is not what I thought. We just simply don't know. So we could, 2 weeks later, decide to name a permanent chief, or we may take up to 6 months, and we may also, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, it's all supposition, could say, all right, this is not working out, we're going to take applications, but we need to do that. It's just setting a time on to do that, but we need to do that within 6 months after naming an interim chief. That way we bound it, and we know we're not going to have an interim chief for more than 6 months. Any other questions? Okay, so if you're okay with these procedures, I'll entertain a motion to pass this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, sequence of events. So, Fairhope Police Department, get your applications in by Monday, August 20th at 5 p.m. if you want to be considered. Okay, item 22 is a resolution the City of Fairhope does hereby consent and agree to the transfer and assignment of Ritchie Company, LLC, doing business as Shucks on the Pier, to David Mills and David Dearman. Now, council, I apologize. I know we've been here a while, but need to talk about this a little bit. The provisions in the lease state that if we don't have any compelling reason to deny the transfer of the lease under the terms spelled out in the lease, that we must transfer the lease to whomever may wish to purchase, in this case, the Shucks Restaurant from the Ritchie Company, or it might be Ritchie. The mayor called me on Friday and said that there were some things that she wanted to discuss with me, and asked me, not to rush this. At this time, we had already put this on the agenda, and she asked me not to rush this decision. One reason given is that, the new buyers haven't been vetted. It doesn't mean that anything would be found to deny them, but have we vetted them? I think that that's a valid reason. The other things were that if there were any other items to consider in speaking to the new purchaser, making them aware of things, that would give us the time to do so. Now, I will tell you that I've spoken to the seller, and I've spoken to the buyer, and I think they went back and forth on that, and the seller asked us to once again approve this tonight. But I thought that we should, at a very minimum, make, any buyer aware that there are provisions in that lease that need to be followed, and one of them, and Mr. McDowell will jump in at any time and help me out, but there are some provisions that state that revenues from the marina, 75% of those revenues must first go towards dredging, and I know that dredging is one issue that's come out there several times before, so we at a minimum need to make any potential buyer aware of that. And also, there is a provision in the lease. The lease goes through 2022, and I don't know the exact month and date of that right off the top of my head, but it's 2022 when the current lease expires, but there is a provision or an option to renew that lease for another 15 years. And I think that it would be in the city's best interest to make everybody, all parties aware that renewal is an option. I think that the attorneys need to look at that very closely and see what those options are, whether that means it's the city's option or the buyer's option, or the leasee or lessee's option, or whether or not it has to be by mutual consent. And I think it's very important, and I want to say this in public, that all parties involved know that. So, in regards to the mayor not wanting to rush this,
I had one more comment, if I can.
you absolutely may.
I also stated, first of all, we met with the potential buyers, and let me tell you, it's a wonderful opportunity, and I'm excited about their vision and what they wanted to do. It was a very good meeting, and I don't have any issues there, but I do think this is one of our most valuable locations, and we do need to do our due diligence, that's all.
Right.
And I don't think it's much asking for another 2 weeks just to look at everything. One of the other concerns I have is that we are going to get $6.2 million to spend to redevelop this part of the coast and the bluffs and and the pier, and really looking towards the long-term best use for this marina, I believe, is for a more transient, group that can come in, eat, visit Fairhope, and leave. We do have to think about the best use for all of our assets, and if that is what we're going to gear towards, then perhaps some of this money can be used to restructure the marina. Of course, we have to dredge in addition to that, but those are things that I asked the potential owners that if we could talk about that now, because then they can help us plan for that. And if we made the marina even larger, they're wanting to do things that I think are going to be great for this area, but we can build it to suit almost. But waiting 4 years for that, when we're getting this money next year, that's why I think this conversation is just a little premature.
I hear you, Mayor, on that. And I would say that I agree with you. We need to have those conversations and maybe vote on this in a couple of weeks, but I don't think we can wait too long, because at the same time, if the owner has a right and we do not have a reason to deny, then we still must transfer it under the existing terms. And I don't know what that would mean to the potential $6.2 million, but we're bound contractually to that agreement. And if they say we simply want to transfer it under the existing terms and conditions, I don't know what authority we have to prevent that, unless we found some compelling reason.
Marcus, have you reviewed the lease? Okay, so are there any clauses? Obviously it has to come back to us for approval. So there must be something that is subject to our approval of the new proposed leasee. So
It just says, can be transferred with the approval of the governing body, essentially, and that we're not going to deny it without cause.
Yeah, it specifically says that, you're not to deny it without some,
Compelling reason.
compelling reasons.
and I don't know that there would be any reason to deny it, but like you said, to maybe see some of the other, just.
Do you have an application, and have you done credit? I mean, these are things that you would do for any lease.
Yeah,
We haven't done any of
all
that
stated
yet.
all stated up front, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So, as much as I hate to put off a potential business transaction, I think for those reasons, that it probably would be wise to postpone it. At the mayor's recommendation, I don't disagree with that. There are some reasons to not deny it, but maybe to hold off for a couple of weeks and not be in a rush. But at that time, if there's no reason to, and they still wish us to that, and we don't have any compelling reasons, then I don't see how you stop it.
But why are we going to hold off a couple of weeks to vet them?
I think it would be to vet them and then find out if there's any other reasons.
Aren't there things within the lease that if they don't uphold their end of the lease, it'll be terminated?
think
If they're not, if
I
they're
think that's
not,
fair to state to them.
it should be in the lease, that if they're not making,
It is.
so what good does vetting do? I mean, if there's already a clause in the lease?
Only thing I can think of is that, you know, if you were thinking of this as a house and somebody was in your house and they were gonna sublet it, and yeah, you could kick somebody out if they didn't pay their bills, but if they sublet it to somebody that just had horrible credit and was a known problem, I mean, you would just wanna nix that right then and say, nah, we're not gonna let you sublet to that person. I mean, I don't know anything
Well,
about that.
there's other
Those are-
provisions in that lease that state that, you know, it can be used for this, this, and this. And I think it's a fair question to ask what the intention is. You know, you can't deny it if it's, if it's in the lease that it can be used for, you know, this use or this use. There are some uses that are permitted in the lease, but I think it's a fair question to ask if, you know, what the intentions are. Make sure they understand what those provisions are. What if they don't understand and they were gonna do something that they didn't understand could be in there?
But I do think as a courtesy to the seller, we don't need to drag it out
No, I
beyond
agree.
2 more weeks.
That's why it pains me to delay it.
Right.
But at the same time, it may be a 2 weeks, something we can all live with. So, anyway, I'll ask you to contemplate that, and if somebody wants to entertain a motion to hereby consent and agree, then, you know, I'll, you know, accept the council's wishes and entertain that motion, but if not, we can just let it lie until the next council meeting. I'll go ahead and ask that. Does anybody wish to make a motion to hereby consent and agree to the transfer? Okay, so we'll bring this back up, and the buyer and the purchaser have our word that this will be brought to a vote.
2 weeks.
As far as I know, as far as I can control, in 2 weeks.
Do you need to do a motion to table?
Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to table this consent and agreement to the transfer and assignment of the shucks on the pier to David Mills and David Dearman until our next regularly scheduled council meeting, which would be on the 27th.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of tabling until the 27th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, and I say next regularly scheduled because we do have a meeting now planned to interview police, which will be a council meeting as well. Okay, item 23 is a recommendation from the Recreation Board to City Council to spend up to $20,000 for the acquisition and installation of a playground set at the Fairhope Soccer Complex, with the stipulation that the Fairhope Rotary Club will reimburse the City of Fairhope for the cost of the equipment itself. The equipment is available through the U.S. Communities Buying Group, so it doesn't have to go out for bid. The equipment cost is $11,816, the freight cost $710, owner's kit $53, installation cost of $66.95 for a total cost of $19,274. Ms. Mazur?
Yes, Tom is on vacation and asked me to speak to this tonight. This is a strong recommendation from the Recreation Board. This is something that Rotary has done before. They have purchased playground equipment. This equipment is going on the soccer field with a direct line of vision to the concession area. We have lots of soccer players with younger siblings who would like to do something other than watch brother or sister run around a field in their minds. This particular equipment has been used before by the city. It's got about a 20-plus year lifeline with excellent reputation. The reason the installation is there is because there is a company that specifically installs this kind of equipment, and Tom had advised me that our experience with them has been excellent. They can get it up in a day's time, and he's never seen any problems with any bolts getting loose, any staining, any rusting, any fading of the equipment. Strongly recommends it. In addition to funding the equipment itself, the Rotary Club is going to come back and put in a little bit of sweat equity. We're going to supply a soft mulch, but they're going to spread it.
Are they, it doesn't state it in here, are they wishing to put their name on the playground? Or anything like that? And they're not asking for naming rights for the soccer fields, are they?
No, they're not.
I don't mind if they put a
Not
plaque
yet.
on
Don't
it.
give 'em any
I don't mind if
ideas.
they put a plaque on around the equipment, but
Hey, I'm a Rotarian, we'll get,
I don't know if we want to.
We'll get help anywhere we can get it.
Put a plaque somewhere in a heartbeat now. But I don't know if we want to name the soccer complex.
no, I don't think that's in the offing.
$3.5 million, they can have naming rights. Okay. Council, I'll entertain a motion from to approve this recommendation from the rec board and that the city council will expend up to $20,000 for this acquisition and installation to be reimbursed by the Fairhope Rotary Club.
So moved.
Second. Thank you to the Rotary Club.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. Motion passes. Thank you, council. Item 24 is a request of Melissa Tompkins on behalf of the Fairhope K-6 Parent Teacher Corporation requesting permission to close the streets in downtown Fairhope on Saturday, February the 2nd, 2019, from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. for a 5K run and 1 mile fun run, the Pirate Dash, to raise money for the educational needs of the Fairhope Elementary and Fairhope Intermediate Schools, the use of electricity and barricades, and to use Henry George Park for the after party. Ms. Hollenhead, you know of any reason to deny this request? Does anybody know how many barricades they're asking for? This is something that's, we don't rent them, but it's something we have to approve. As far as schools, any questions about that? Not having any idea? Okay, all right. It's not like we're going to deny it anyway, right? I'll entertain a motion to grant this request.
So moved.
Did I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to grant this request. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. And just before we get to public participation, I want to clarify something. Lieutenant Hollenhead, if you could help me spread the word to the police department, if there are officers in the police department that want to submit the application to be considered for this interim chief position, please have them submit those applications to the city clerk so that she can distribute those to the mayor and the city, city council. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, last item is public participation. If you have anything else to bring forth before the council, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Well, good evening. First of all, my name's John Manellis, 104 White Avenue, and I apologize to you council members. I've probably outstayed my welcome coming up to this podium, so if you want to instruct the officer to remove me, I'll completely understand that. But, you know,
I might need you as a witness.
I didn't plan to speak tonight. Councilman Brown will attest to that, but sorry about that. Item 9, this Fresh Start Fairhope Council Manager form of government, it's an important issue to those in the community. And I think you didn't hear all of the story here tonight, at least as I see it, and I think it's important that you do hear it. First of all, I was one of the original people that signed up for the Fresh Start Fairhope movement. I really believe that a city manager form of government run by a professional who is educated and skilled in doing this is good for the city. It actually gives the city council actually more power, I think, day to day, and it does remove some of the tensions regarding, you know, day-to-day operations over at running the city. The original Fresh Start movement that was circulated had in it not only moving to a city manager form of government, but it had in it electing 3 council members by district. So this wasn't invented by the mayor. This was part of the initial movement by the Fresh Start Fairhope folks. It had 3 council members elected by district, a mayor at large, and then 1 additional council member at large. After that initial forming of that movement, a short time later, the movement organizer sent out an informal email to those that had signed up asking, do you prefer that we move forward on the petition, specifying that it is the council members are to be elected by district or at large. Apparently, some people thought, well, maybe we should just leave it at large. It passed that people wanted it at large. Somewhat informal, but the petition drive, the movement went forward with the at-large option. So there's been some confusion around that on both sides. I'm not saying that Fresh Start Fairhope movement is confused about what they're proposing now, but everything I've read regarding the opinions on that, I'm like you, Council President Burrell, I'm confused on some of this. I just don't know where this will end up, whether it's going to be a valid petition and upheld if it's voted on. I think that the mayor and the Fresh Start Fairhope movement want the same thing. That's what I'm sitting here. I'm amazed at the discord. They want the same thing. The main crux of it is to move the form of government to a city manager council form of government. I think that the council part of it is important to a lot of people because they feel that something that important shouldn't be decided by just the group that put forth the petition, but it should be decided by the voters at large that come forward to do it. And I think that there is some fear by some that support the three council members by district being voted on that way. I think there's some fear that if it's put before the present council, it'll be voted down. So I think that's where some of all of this is being stirred up and the concern around it. But I appreciate, Council President Burrell, you moving that forward, because I don't think it can hurt to have Mr. Zunk's questions answered, and I don't think it can hurt to have Mayor Wilson's. I'm not sure of this deadline. 2020 is a way off, so I guess there's some kind of deadline, but I think it's more important that the voters know what they're voting for specifically before they proceed with anything. So I wanted to offer that because I'm not sure that you all are aware of how that originally started, and that actual three-district option was part of the initial movement. So I thank you again. I hope not to come forward here for a while again. So thanks.
Hey, just to clarify, I don't think that I said I was confused by that. I thought that I understood that it was after it was voted upon, then the council decided what it was. And I didn't say that was right or wrong. I just said that's the way I understood the statute being written. Not siding with either side of that. But I don't disagree that there are a lot of people that are going to be upset to find out that it's not one way or the other, whichever side of the aisle you're on. There are going to be some people that vote for that change of government that are going to be happy if the council voted one way, and then conversely, there are people, whichever way, if the council even in fact gets to decide, they're going to be upset with what the council decides. So I don't disagree that, is there a clarification to be given to how the ballot will read? But the way I read the statute was that you're simply voting on the change of government, and the other would be decided later.
The confusion whether or not if it's held, if it's going to be valid. I think that's where the confusion, we don't know, and I think the voters have a right to know.
Yeah.
If they vote for this, it's going to be validly, or it's going to be upheld if it's, one way or the other.
Right.
So, and again,
Yeah,
thank
and that's
you.
where I said, the constitutionality of it is brought kind of into question. Is it valid if the people don't ultimately know what they're getting?
Right.
What about the geese, John?
I'll save that for a couple of months down
All
the
right.
road.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else like to approach the council? Okay. Seeing no one, I will close public participation. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, council.